Hello, everyone. I'm Billy Brake here with KONAMI. Some of you may know me from my dueling days when I won 4 Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series, and one of my biggest accomplishments is that I just merely competed at the 2017 Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship. Well, on our newest edition of Roundtable, I actually have someone very special, one of my favorite players, and the 2023 Yu-Gi-Oh! World Champion, Paulie Aronson. Paulie, thanks for joining us here on, not at KONAMI. Well, I'm here at KONAMI, but you're joining us live from your own home.
Yep, that's right. What's up, guys?
So introduce yourself a little bit. I already introduced you as the world champion, but who are you, Paulie?
Hey, guys, I'm Paulie Aronson. Yeah, I'm the 2023 world champion, first one from the U.S., two-time YCS champion. And yeah, I've been playing competitively, well, the locals, regionals, since 2006.
Yeah,
Long time player.
Yeah, definitely a long-time player. I've seen you around the tournament scene for so many years. And, let's go ahead and just talk about the policy. Obviously, you have a little bit of hot water with some, policy issues. Is there anything you just want to say just to get it out of the way from the very beginning?
Yeah. So as a lot of you guys probably have heard, I was recently suspended for 6 months with a registration issue from a deck list issue. But do we want to go over it?
Just advice you'd give to players or something like to look out for. I mean, the big thing about the policy documents is like there's a lot to look through, and it's like important to read through it like every so often because I mean you want to make sure there's things like and if it ever comes down to like something you don't like you might not know, it's always better probably to err on the side of caution, maybe like that kind of thing. But yeah, just kind of just your overall how your own where you come from about it.
Yeah. So what Billy just said is like really really good advice. If you're not sure about something, I would say it's not like don't necessarily say that. It like don't assume one way or the other, but check, like double check, make sure you 100% know, whether you're allowed to do something or not before you do it. In my case, as we all know, you are not allowed to change your deck list once you submit it. I thought I found a legal workaround. I dropped from the tournament and re-entered, taking a round 1 loss after round, post round when I took the round 1 loss, re-registered with my corrected deck list. When I submitted my original deck list, I was playing Pearly. I was missing, for those of you guys who know, Pearly Happy Memory and Pearly Delicious Memory, which are like 2 of the like core cards of the deck. You can't really play it without them. So it was dropping either way. And I was like, well, there's late registrations, always open to all players. I thought it was, like I said, illegal workaround basically, and it was a very illegal workaround. So I am rightfully taking a 6-month suspension for that. And yeah, so after it happened later that night, I actually went because the tournament organizer said to me, like, "Hey, this is a DQ. It's against policy." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And I went that night and I read through the entire 40 or 60 page policy document, whatever it is, and it's bottom of page 28 or 27. That line, like I said, can't do that. So it's probably for everybody to just like read through the whole document. There's actually 2. There's the policy document and specifications of what policy violations lead to what infraction and such and all that stuff. It's probably good for everybody. Just as players, like read both. And if you haven't, and if you don't know, always double check to find out whether something's definitively allowed or not allowed. And yeah, take it from me, the world champion who has to wait 6 months now to play again.
Yeah, well, that's all right. Good to get that out of the way. And I mean, you're. Yeah, I like the way, your confidence about it. You understand, like, the mistake happened and, only to move on from here. I mean, it helps that, it's only a 6-month suspension, so you will be back in time for the next World Championship, which you have an invite because you are the world champion. So we know that we are already going to see you on the world stage in 2024. And, personally, I'm super excited about that. Can't wait to see you there. So still, staying on this topic of the World Championship, I mean, you are the first ever first ever USA world champion. There's been one other from North America, but the first one ever representing the United States. And I mean, that meant so much to me personally. For so long, I wanted to be that guy. I mean, I think everyone always, that's one of their aspirations and dreams is to make it to the World Championship and win. And, you finally did it for all of us. And thank you so much for that. And it was awesome watching you there along the way. So let's just talk about the overall journey at the World Championship specifically. So how was it to go to Japan and compete, like outside of just the playing, like the whole trip to Japan itself for the World Championship?
Oh yeah, it was. The trip was really fun, especially like the official like Thursday through Sunday, just like everything Konami like put on for us. We had an awesome welcome dinner, and like we did like a little tour of Akibara. Yeah, it was awesome. Like everybody was super nice. The American players, we were chaperoned by Liliana from Konami. She was super sweet. She we made sure we all had a good time, and it was the trip was fun, and the tournament was awesome. Especially
Obviously.
especially day two, at least for me. Just basically the whole day two stage ceremony, all that stuff was like really really cool in my opinion. And
Yeah, the atmosphere.
the atmosphere there basically at the day two venue was just like awesome. And like I hope I heard from a ton of people back home, like friends and family, like, oh, we were watching, we were rooting for you, even though it was like the middle of the night back home. So like that was super sweet of everyone. And like, yeah, it was fun to hear and fun to play in.
Yeah, now, so you mentioned being on that stage, and that's kind of one of my biggest. You've been on the finals before. You mentioned you won multiple YCSs, remote, in person, and then you were on the finals on that stage where you had that huge intro to come out to play that final match for the World Championship. How were your nerves? Where were you mentally during, like, specifically that moment on the stage, heading over to that final match?
Oh, I was like so like nervous and like hyped at the same time and like focused like the whole like 2 hours before the final match. There were so many cool like events going on, like right, like finals for Duel Links, finals for Master Duel, and like everybody was out in the crowd watching, and I was like sitting backstage like on my phone. I like, oh, I want to go watch, but I also just want to like 100% just like focus and prepare as much as I can. So that was my afternoon, and then finally like being brought onto the stage, it was just super stressful. And I'm like, while we're walking up, I literally, like, as I'm walking up the steps to go up to the front, in my head, I was still thinking. So I was like, do I make him go first, or do I want to go first? Like, and I was going over like all the like details of like everything that goes into that question.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, so preparation up until the very last moment. I mean, I'm the same kind of way where you're always trying to take advantage of every moment you have to think. And then at the end of it all, like, how did it actually feel? Like that moment you won, when you knew it was all over, it was you knew like the last attack was going to be declared. You knew you were going to be the world champion. How was that exact moment? What was going through your head?
I think the moment I knew I thought I had it was when he said when he was thinking on the Nibiru. There was a point where I don't remember if it was end of main or maybe I summoned a Savage to forfeit or something. I don't remember the exact scenario, but I remember he Nibiru'd me at one point. I ended up playing through it, but then he drew and extended the handshake, and I was like, "Woo, nice."
Did it hit you like right away that you were the world champion? Like you'd just done something so many people haven't been able to accomplish before you, myself included.
Like I said, there was the moment on my turn when he was thinking on the nib, when I knew kind of, and then there was probably like later that night, maybe like immediate aftermath of the match. It was more just like stressful because it was like wait, no, go over there, go celebrate. Okay, so I had to just like leave my cards on the table and brought them back. Someone brought them back to the hotel later that night. The staff brought back, but it was funny. Then they wanted to interview me, and then like they gave me the microphone. The interviewer didn't like ask any questions, give me the microphone, so I didn't know what to say. And it was kind of that was kind of funny too. And it was just a whole bunch of funny stuff. But then it was like 2 hours of pictures, interviews, and stuff. And then then finally hit me.
Yeah, so you were busy. It was go, so you didn't really have a chance to like sit down and realize like what had happened. Everyone had to get a chance to talk to you. Everyone wanted a picture with you. Like, I mean, you just became the world champion. So yeah, I remember seeing you later that night, or it might have been the next morning even, and I in the hotel lobby, and I was like, "How's it feel, man?" And you looked at me and you said, "Tired. I feel tired," because it had just been such a gauntlet. I think afterwards. So speaking of awesome experiences, I think I had a front row seat to pretty much your whole journey to the World Championship. I commentate most of our events, and I was there in your first finals at the Remote Duel YCS that you won. I was there for the finals of the 250th in Los Angeles that you won, and I was there for your point playoff victory to get you to that World Championship, and of course there at the finals as well. But I want to go back to that Remote Duel YCS. So the very first time you won, you've been playing for a while. Tell me about like that experience, like where you were able to break out and to win that Remote Duel YCS, and then you can talk about how it felt, the difference between the Remote Duel one and then your 250th YCS win.
Yeah, it's funny. In some ways, to this day, like probably because it's your first win. Like in some ways, the remote one is still the one I don't want to say feel the most proud of, but like in some ways, like still feel the most proud of. But in different ways, Worlds was the most exciting, just because you have the crowd there and the stage and knowing so many people are watching. But like knowing you got your first win, like on a personal level, is like I think in a way one of the most exciting things. Yeah.
Because you finally did it. You're like, oh man, all this hard work. Like, here's the validation, the proof that my hard work has paid off.
Yeah, definitely. Like I had won regionals, pre-COVID, like in the years like before that, but never like a YCS like that. Yeah, but no, I know you asked about like my journey, so I guess briefly I'll go over like kind of how I started and all that stuff.
Yeah,
When I
you can,
was
speaking of that, you can just going through the whole journey. If you want to go through the whole journey, you can talk about like what changed. Like you mentioned how you'd won regionals
oh,
before and everything, but what was like the changing? Because all of a sudden you won the remote dual YCS, you won an in-person YCS, you went to Worlds and won Worlds. Something if you as you go through it, just talk about maybe like what has changed, what really broke open the floodgates and had this incredible year, because they're all with different decks too. Let me just point this out for those at home. Paulie won the remote dual YCS with Hauk, like Kriston Hauk of Fibrex, like an adventure synchro kind of deck. He won the 250th YCS in LA with Kashtira, I'm pretty sure. And the point playoff was also with Kashtira, I believe.
That was Kashtira,
and then
Worlds
Dragon Link. So a man of many different decks. It's not like a new deck or theme came out that like took you to the top. You took these themes to the top. So yeah, go ahead and go through your whole story. I'll let you, tell you how you went through the process. But what in your play style, or was it the game that changed, or you changed? Like, what do you think led to all the success? And then you can go ahead and talk about like the whole journey.
Yeah, so I don't tend to view it as really as like as there was any one like crucial turning point or like revelation that happened. I feel like it's more just like a progression. I think for everyone who starts playing, you just it takes time. Just keep practicing, keep playing, and like eventually, like one day, it just it's your event. If you've put the time in and your skills are there, and especially if you've put the time in for that event and you really have like a good deck ready to go and you've practiced and tested. But yeah, I think it's just over the years, like I said, I've been playing a long time, and it just finally happened.
So patience.
It was fun.
You think patience is a big part of it, just as much as like
That's it.
passion, practice, and patience.
Yes, patience is a good word to summarize what I was trying to say. Yeah. Although I will say generally, or I guess I'll get to that after. I was going to say some my general advice to players, I suppose, but I suppose we'll probably go into that maybe afterward. But just to again finish my story briefly, it was I started playing when I was 10 in 2006. My dad found our first locals, and my dad used to play too. We used to both go to locals. It was here in Connecticut Gaming, etc. And I played there for years. They had regionals there every couple months, so I would play regionals there. Went to my first SJC, which for you guys was the predecessor to YCS. YCS used to be called SJCs. My first SJC was 2008. My first nationals was 2009. Nationals was the predecessor to the WCQ. And then kept playing. I took a few breaks over the years. I didn't play Dragon Ruler format in 2013. That was the one format I missed. The 1 year I missed. I was always sad about that. But other than that, I've been playing like all the way through. I had success in some success in the mid 2010s. And then in the late 2010s, like I said, I won some regionals. I had I think like 3 regional wins before then COVID hit. I grinded remote duels, and then the remote YCS, and that was actually my first official KONAMI premier event top. And my friends used to joke because like I'd like to think I had a good number of friends and players who like kind of like look up to me as a player a little bit, or like I feel like I was a somewhat respected player, but like I had never topped like a YCS. So my friends used to joke with me like, "Oh, you're probably like the best player without a YCS top." And I was like, "Oh my god!" And then they like used to joke like, "You're gonna win on your first top," and I was like, "That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. No way." And then it happened. And it was, and like I said, that was probably like the most exciting moment of like all the years I've played Yu-Gi-Oh. Was probably my first premier event win. And then after that, COVID ended, and once in-person organized play started again, I just started going to like all the events, like as much as I could. That was when I really started, because I'd never really traveled to that many YCSs before COVID. I would go to maybe like 1 or 2 premier events per year, like the WCQ and like maybe 1 YCS, because they usually have one up here in the Northeast in like May or June. But after COVID, like I was finally able to like really start traveling, and I went to like Charlotte, Hartford, the WCQ, Minneapolis, Pasadena. Like I went to all those, and I think I topped the WCQ that year. So that was my first like in person premier event top. And then the next then was Vegas, and then the 250th in LA, and that was where I got my win with Kashira. Oh, and I forgot. I also got second place. I got second place at YCS Costa Rica at the end of 2022 during tournament format.
Was that against Jesse Cotton, right? I think in the final.
Yes, we had a really good 3 games tournament mirror match. I will always feel that was probably the most skillful format in the history of the game. I think the Terra mirror was so it was so hard because you'd have these 8 chain link chains resolving, and the mirror was so intricate. It was very, very skillful, and we had 3 good games in finals, and then game 3, at the end, we started getting close to time, and I was trying to play quicker, and I made a misplay. I made a crucial misplay that cost me the match in game 3. It was a really good match, and it was against Jesse, who's probably the best player in the game. So it was really fun, and then I was bummed out.
Present company excluded. I'm talking about both of us. No, I'm just joking. Jesse is one of the best to do it.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
I'm just joking.
But yeah, I was bummed out about getting second, and I was like, But then, a couple months later, I got the 250th, and I was like, oh, wow, that was cool. And that one had I think we had 3,300 players in LA 250th.
It was huge.
So yeah, it wasn't as big as the 100th YCS, which was in 2012. The 100th YCS was I think 4,000 to 5,000 players. It was in I think Long Beach, California. So but this was I think the second or maybe third. Maybe it was there might be one I'm forgetting, but maybe it was second or third biggest. The 250th, but it was big. And then
over 3,000 is pretty solid. Once it gets over 3,000, they're all just enormous tournaments. So, but I think you think that was cool. I won the 250th YCS in LA, but it was actually quite the accomplishment. I mean, especially coming off that in person. Did it feel different to win in person for the first time versus that remote duel win? I mean, I know you said it was the most exciting because it was the first one, but you're still, when you win the remote duel one, you're in your own room, right? You're not celebrating with your friends behind you. Tell me about the difference between that. I'm assuming when you won the 250th in LA, it was just so happy for you. I mean, I was happy for you.
Again, it felt different just because I think just because the remote was the first, because that was 600 people versus 3,300. So logically speaking, the 250 should have felt more exciting. But I think, but it was still definitely very exciting in its own right. It ended so late that everyone had left, so there was only 20 people left in the room watching. So it was almost midnight local time when it ended. So it felt a little weird, but no, it was also that was awesome. I couldn't believe it when that happened. I was like, oh, I guess, because you win once, and sometimes you think to yourself, oh, maybe I just got lucky. Maybe I just got lucky. I'm just a one-trick pony. And then you get your second win, and you're like, wow, I did it.
I was saying, you definitely get that further validation when you get the second one. And then the third and fourth, that's just expected at some point when that happens. Well, we're still waiting on number 4 for you, but you got number 3 in the biggest stage possible.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about the point playoff. So, in order to go to the World Championship, you were one of the top 16 highest point getters throughout the past year, right? Which means you played in tons of regionals, you played in tons of YCS, so you're able to get points. So the more regionals you go to, the better you do. You have a chance to play in that 16-man playoff on Friday we have at the NAWCQ, where first and second get to go to the World Championship. So it's a way to give back to players who've been so dedicated to the game throughout the previous year. How was that? The thing about that tournament, it's a lot of good players. So every round is going to be difficult. Tell me, I remember you talking about then you engineered your deck in a specific way to where you were prepared for that small pool of players you were playing against.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So first, this year was actually 32 players in the playoff. So it was slightly harder, almost even. Well, maybe it depends on how you look at it, because there was because of COVID, there was no World Championship for 3 years. So the players who had been earning Worlds points during pre-COVID 2019 and then 2020 and 21 with remote duels, those points, they had to do something for all those players. So they rolled over the top 16 players with the most Worlds points from that 3-year season period and then the 16 players with the most points from our 2022 into 23 season, and then all 32 of us actually played together in the playoff. So like it was arguably slightly easier to qualify this year, you could say, because there was like the top 16 was already qualified. But like then when it came to the actual tournament, it was harder because you had an extra round. You're playing against 32 people instead of 16 people. So it was like I did not even remotely think I was gonna like qualify. I kept saying like all year, I kept saying like, yeah, like I just want to like make the playoffs so I can say I made the playoff. Like that would be cool. Feel like I was one of the top 32 or whatever. And then like I actually qualified. So yeah, but yeah. So I built I ended up playing Kashtira again for that, just because like that whole like season, that whole like ban list season, like I kept testing so many different decks, like Runic, like Sword Soul. I don't even remember now what else was meta at the time. Whatever was meta, like I tested like almost all the decks, and like I couldn't find anything that felt like it was favored against Cash. Like Cash never felt like a dominant best deck, but it always felt like it was just marginally better than all of the other decks. I think just because Arise Heart was just so oppressive with both the macro lock and the quick effect banish that together, it was just like so hard for most decks to compete against that, to be able to consistently break that. So I ended up like always just defaulting back to Kashtira, and so I played Kashtira again for the playoff, which I really didn't want to. But I was like, it's the deck I know the best. It's what I've been playing. I can't find anything else. I'm just gonna play it. And but what I did do was I built my main and my side for what I anticipated the other players were going to play. So because it was only a 32-person tournament, like even more so than like a regular like YCS, let's say, where you want to build your deck for like what you expect the meta to be, but you also know like most of your rounds, especially in Swiss, are going to be against like rogue decks or like a huge like diverse variety of different decks. So you can't really like hard build your main for like a specific matchup. Like you can't, let's say you want to play Crow because like it's good against Tear. You can't main Crow most of the time because it's not, there's so many decks where that's incredible. Like it's really good against certain decks, but there's so many decks that it's not that good against. So like in a main event, like I generally feel like I generally stay away from at least from main decking like highly targeted cards for certain matchups. But in the playoff, where it's only 32 people, I was able to, go through the list and kind of, like, I know a lot of these guys. Like, I've tested with these guys. I know what these players have been playing for the last couple events during the season. Like, just from, public results, primarily, of seeing, like, what people have been playing. I'm like, okay, I know he's been playing Cash, and he's been playing Cash. And if they ran into what I ran into of, like, yeah, there's nothing else that really stands out, like, a lot of the players are probably going to still play Cash. And I made, like, a pie chart and ended up, like, estimating that about half were going to play Cash. And I was like, all right, if 50% of the field is mirror matches, I can reasonably tailor my main deck for the hard for the mirror match, which even more so than I would ever do in like a main event, like I said. So I mained like enemy controllers and triple tactics thrust and cards that were really good at breaking Kashtira boards by just taking her Eyes Heart. So I kind of played a build that was like highly tailored for the mirror match. I side decked for like other matchups, so I'd have coverage at least games 2 and 3. And it ended up kind of paying off. Two of my 4 matches in the 4-round, playoff were mirror matches. So, which lines up with, like I said, estimating that about 50% of the field was going to be playing Cash, which is what I think it ended up being. It was about like half. So yeah, so that worked out really well. And yeah, and like my final match was a mirror. In top 4, for the playoff. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think the common thing I hear there from earlier discussion when you were practicing getting ready for the World Championship, I mean, it's the same kind of thing. It's preparation. Like knowing what everyone else is going to be bringing into a tournament is key when you're preparing for the tournament. I mean, it sounds so simple, but being well prepared is the best thing you can do. You shouldn't be deciding like, oh, what cards am I going to side out in this matchup while you're sitting playing your round. You shouldn't have to be looking through your deck trying to like figure out which. I mean, maybe on the last one there's something you want to try out. You should already go in with a game plan for every strategy, what you're going to do, what's going in, what's going out, and like be ready. And I think you've really shown that preparation is a huge part that goes into every tournament. Just knowing you don't want to be caught off guard. You don't want the first time you see an interaction happen in the game be in the tournament. You want to play through all these scenarios. Yes. And I think 100%. That is something that's really been huge for you as a player, is your preparation and dedication.
Yeah. Even on like just on that one particular point about side decking, like not only should you have all your side patterns kind of like thought out and prepared ahead of time, but even like a lot of players, they'll build their deck and then they'll submit their list and then they'll go over the side patterns, and that's better than not doing it all. Like you definitely want to have them in mind before the tournament starts. but more so, what you really want to do is while you're building the side, like before you submit your list, you want to go over the patterns too. Because the biggest thing is making sure that like if your main deck has like X amount of dead cards that are going to be dead in a certain matchup, you want to make sure that you have enough cards in your side deck. Like let's say you have 5 cards in your main that aren't going to be good against Unchained. You want to make sure you have at least 5 cards in your side that can go in against Unchained. And so you want to go over all the like top, let's say 5 to 10 matchups, and make sure that the numbers just line up, so you don't end up with like 1 or 2, like having to keep in 1 or 2, suboptimal or dead cards in your main post side. So you make sure that your side's built to cover, all the matchups. And I personally, am very preferenced toward kind of just generic cards that give a lot of coverage for like a lot of matchups. When I build my sides, I tend to very much build like, I don't like to play cards that are like only good against like one matchup, let's say, unless it's like the best deck, then it's justified. But otherwise, like I try to play like generic cards that give like a lot of coverage in general. So
yeah, we'll get into more of that earlier, like things like Xyz Encore versus Book of Eclipse, or you can Book of Eclipse multiple other decks. But meanwhile, Xyz Encore, very strong and hyper focused on one deck, but what it does against that one deck is really good. But I definitely see where you're saying to go for more of the broad options, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But still sticking on these tournaments, I want to go now. So we went from the point playoff now into the WCS. I want to talk about Swiss rounds of the WCS because I have a personal story that nobody else on the planet has but me, because I was in that room. I was in we just finished our commentary for the last round of Swiss, of the last round of the World Championship. It was round 7, because we had 7 rounds of Swiss to cut to top 8 this year, as opposed to the usual 5.
Yes.
But so in that last round, I wanted to see how you were doing in particular, because I'm cheering on. You were actually playing against another player from the U.S., I believe, in the last round.
Yep, Jeremy. Yep. Our WCU champion.
Yep, you were playing against Jeremy Mitchell there in the last round, and I was standing off to the side enough where I could see, and I saw you actually lost the last round to Jeremy Mitchell, who, we just featured Jeremy Mitchell in the round previous, so I was cheering for both of you. Sad to see, like, one of y'all had to lose. But immediately after you lost, you weren't mad, you weren't sad, you were just sitting there. You, in fact, looked over to the table to the right of you, where another player one of the Japanese players, I believe, I don't remember which one, was sitting, who had just lost, and you just looked to him and were like, "Hey, man, did you lose?" And he was like, "Yeah." And you were like, "Me too." "Oh, well." And then you just kept going back to like your side decking, like, no big deal, just lost the last round of the World Championship. I couldn't tell who won between you and Jeremy from your match. And like, just to see your optimism and how happy you were, even despite losing that round, because like I'd been in that position and lost like at the World Championship, and I was utterly devastated. But to see that the smile on your face, and you were just trying to bring up the others around you, it was pretty special for me. And then for you to still make the top 8 after having such a good attitude, I don't think I ever shared with you that story, because I don't think you even knew I was there watching in the background. But it was pretty awesome, and yeah, just loved your mentality, and it was really awesome to see you still make that top 8.
I appreciate that. It was. I always try to play with good sportsmanship and just like be friendly, even if you lose. It's like you might still be upset about it, and even if there's time for me, I'm definitely like, oh man, I lost. Like, sure, it is upsetting. But like I just try. I don't want to make my opponent they won. They should be happy. I don't want to make my opponent feel bad. So it's like always like just hey, congrats. You got it, and yeah, and that's it. I did not, in that point in time, think I was still hoping I was going to top. I felt it was like 60-40 or maybe 50-50. Like I didn't know if I was hoping I was going to make it on tiebreakers. I wasn't sure. But yeah, I ended up getting 7th actually. I think after Swiss there was two X3s I think that made it. There was a point afterward where I found out that the players who I had lost to earlier on, my tiebreakers, they had lost the last round. And then I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna make it now. Like I think I'm probably out on tiebreakers. So I was actually surprised and happy when I saw that I had made it. But I appreciate that. I actually I actually want to say thank you to Jeremy personally, actually, because the what you commented about watching our match and seeing I appreciate that. That was funny. But later that night we actually did interviews with the top 4 who were going into day 2. Like they interviewed us, right? I think for like KONAMI Japan, like an official interview type thing, like briefly. And they asked us like, was there any one match that you had today that like stood out? And Jeremy named our match, and he said he was like, I think I forgot what word he used, but he said something like, I feel like inspired by like Paulie, like to see that whether he wins or loses, he always has a smile on his face, and like I want to like be like that. He said something along those lines, and like how much he like respected that too, and I appreciated and respected the fact that he said that, and I want to say thank you to him because that was probably like one of my favorite things that anyone said to me that weekend or following Worlds. Like I really appreciated that. Because I do
I
always try.
lied. I guess I lied a little bit. I'm not the only person with that story. I guess Jerry Mitchell is also probably the only other person that was there for that whole story that I just had because he was sitting at that table. So he was able to witness the greatness that I saw and the kindness that I saw from you, even, being so humble with a loss there in the last round, which is awesome for him to also acknowledge because it was a cool moment. Like, I was proud of you for the way you acted after that loss. I was like, there we go. That's the kind of duels we need.
But yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you to him for that, and to you.
Shout out to Jerry Mitchell. Yeah,
right.
Very nice guy. NAWCQ champion. Also one of the Kashira using those enemy controllers and stuff in the main deck, if I remember correctly. It was definitely the tech for that weekend. But all right, you're the world champion. You won. Enough from that. So we've kind of been giving like some advice. Let's go ahead and just talk about the mentality of winning and advice for aspiring players. I mean, I think the biggest things we've been pushing is that you can just tell just from the basic preparation that Paulie has is just patience and practice are key. At least for me.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I love being asked that question because like I love like okay, so I kind of say the same thing in all my interviews or whenever a player asks for advice. So I'm gonna go over it right here. This is so I think the biggest thing is always it's just practice. Yu-Gi-Oh is very much just like any other skill. It's just practice. It's like time in, results out to some extent. And I think just like if you put the time in and really like yeah, I think modern Yu-Gi-Oh especially like even more so than Yu-Gi-Oh in like the past is very much a game where like a lot of players have always had this kind of debate over like theory versus testing being practice and just like sitting down and grinding games, and a lot of players really like thinking about like the theory behind it and like what the theory of like, all right, how is this card going to interact in this matchup, and should I play this or this, and just like really taking the time to think through your deck list and make sure every card has like a theoretical role, and preparing for your matchups like mentally, and those are all the things you want to do. But I feel you have to do it hands on.
I'm taking that from you. A theoretical role in my deck. That is exactly like people always talk about theory and just having that's very funny. A theoretical role in my card list. Sorry about interrupting you. Yeah.
No, that was funny. No, definitely. But I think perhaps somewhat in the past, Yu-Gi-Oh was a game where you could like if you have a good mind for the game and you've played and you're a skillful player, you could definitely like theory out a good deck list and probably just like in the moment in a tournament like be able to figure out the right plays just from like general experience with Yu-Gi-Oh. But I think modern Yu-Gi-Oh has reached a point of complexity where you can't just sit down and in your game in tournament figure out the right play for every situation. Or even for most situations. I think like for me personally, like the first time I come across like a certain situation, I usually make the wrong choice. So that's why for me, at least personally, like, I'm always like, I know I have to make the mistake at least once to then be able to, know for next time, so to speak. So I'm just a huge advocate of just practice and just like I think the biggest thing for success in a tournament is like, it's not even about having like the best deck in terms of like counter picking the meta or like the deck that theoretically has the best matchups or like the highest ceiling. It is about those things, like all things considered. But if we're talking like, I think the best deck choice for you personally is the deck that you have the most experience with, not the theoretical best deck. Like with the clarification of as long as it's within reason of like we're talking about like a meta or semi-meta deck. Like if the deck you have the most experience with is like, let's say like Amazonas, let's say, some strategies just they're just not gonna be that competitive to take to a big tournament. But like if we're talking about like the top 10 or 20 decks, let's say, like at least the top 10, like the best choice for you is like the one that like you have the most experience with. So like right now, for example, maybe let's say like Salamangreat is like, it's not like a top meta deck, but like it's still a good deck. And if you let's say you have Salamangreat, or you have like Infernoble, which is like a really like kind of standout like combo deck from the last event that I think is a really good deck right now, but it's like really hard to play. And so, or let's say a better example, like Rescue Ace, because that's just like one of the accepted best decks right now. So if you have to choose between like Rescue Ace, let's you have Rescue Ace in hand, and you also have your Salamangreat deck that you've been playing for like several months. Like you should play your Salamangreat deck, because like you're gonna, if you play Rescue Ace but you haven't actually like practiced with it or like grinded with it, like situations are going to come up where you haven't like experienced before, and it's going to be very hard to make the right play. And so I think like that's a mistake a lot of players make, is like switching decks last minute before a tournament, or like the last couple days before a tournament, and trying because it's like a better deck, or like the best deck. And I think that's a mistake.
Definitely.
Usually. So that's like one piece of advice. Like go with the deck that you have the most experience with, as long as it's like a strong enough deck. And yeah, and just practice. Don't theory. Like just get the games in when you can.
Yes, definitely.
And
Practice.
the most important thing is, like to win an event, it's not about playing the perfect list or the perfect deck. It's about going in with a deck and a list where you know all the interactions for all the top matchups, and you have like the siding patterns, like all like you've played every matchup enough times where like you've tested the different options for siding, and like the correct siding patterns. Where like every spot in the main is you don't have any undecided spots. You've like tested every card, and you like all 40 cards in your main deck, or all 45 or whatever. So that's just like I very much my view on it. It's just about like going in with as much knowledge and practice as you can.
Okay, so yeah, great advice there from Paulie. Definitely want to take all of that into consideration. Now let's kind of like let's start with a broad perspective about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. So there's a lot of games out there, but Paulie, you've chosen to play Yu-Gi-Oh! You said you've been dedicated throughout the years. What is your favorite aspects of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game?
I just love the game. Like I love like I don't know, I've always loved the game. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like I feel like the bet, like when people ask what is Yu-Gi-Oh, I usually describe it as it's a cross between chess and poker, and I feel like I like that. It's like you have like, hello bunny, I don't have a rescue rabbit, but I do have a Stardust dragon. So
That's the best part. Cute rabbits and giant dragons.
Yeah, that's what Yu-Gi-Oh is about. That's what Yu-Gi-Oh is about. Aside from being about a cross between chess and poker, whatever I was saying. But no, that is I think like it's a strategic game that also has like some element of variance, of luck involved, which makes it exciting, which makes it fun, which also puts a lot of like math into it, right? So it's just a really good game. I think okay, this is gonna sound like I can't objectively say this because I've only really ever played Yu-Gi-Oh competitively, but I think Yu-Gi-Oh is probably the hardest trading card game. Because specifically modern Yu-Gi-Oh, not necessarily like Yu-Gi-Oh in the past, but like at least like Yu-Gi-Oh in its modern form, like it's just there's so much, it's so complicated because every card now kind of has so many like effects, right? Like back in the day, like a card had like 1 or 2 effects. Now every card has like 3 or 4 effects with like specific certain like different restrictions depending on the card. I actually think that's I think Yu-Gi-Oh is becoming an even more skillful game than it used to be, because Yu-Gi-Oh's always been a good game, but I think like modern Yu-Gi-Oh has reached like such a point of complexity that like it like they're kind of like it ties into what I was saying before about how like there's so many interactions, then like there's so many different interactions that you can't just like foresee. You have to like really practice it. But overall, I think lots of players still love the game, and we're still getting new players. And us, those of us who are veteran players, competitive players, I think really appreciate the skill of the modern game and where it's at. So overall, I think the game's in a really good place.
Yeah.
Since the question was, what's your thoughts on the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game? I know I gave a big broad answer, but yeah.
Oh no, that's perfect. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on a lot of those points. I mean, I'll tell you, the playing at like your OTS, just a local experience, is different now than it was 13 years ago. 13 years ago, not because of my play skill, but like I could walk into an OTS, I wouldn't have to worry about my deck. I could just play whatever deck I've been playing. It doesn't matter what the other people are playing. Chances are I'm going to do well at the local OTS, make top 4 or whatever. But now you just can't do that. You have to practice. Even like every round can be difficult. Every interaction, every moment matters. It's not nothing. Nothing's a cakewalk anymore, which is the way I like it. I want to feel like I'm actually playing a game. You have to know the order that you play your cards. Like that can change and vary based upon the matchup. There's a lot of intricacies, and you get a really good feeling of like it feels good to win. Like you're like, wow, I earned that. I had to work for that win. I didn't just like casually happen to win because summon Stratos, Destiny Draw Malicious. Like no. My deck's a lot more complex than that, and the amount of time that goes into deck building now is also just huge. Just your deck preparation along with being able to play your deck. Lots of different layers to it, and I definitely like that about Yu-Gi-Oh right now. Like, 'cause I've also been playing since the very beginning, like since back in 2001 or 2 when it came to America for the first time, and the way the game has grown is just fascinating. And I really think Yu-Gi-Oh is at a place right now to where it's more fun than it honestly has ever been to me in the current Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, some players might feel it's maybe too complex because it takes so much time to really put yourself in a good where you feel confident. But like I don't know. I think it's in a good place. And like what Billy just said about like that locals example was like I 100% agree with everything you just said. Like exactly, like you could be like a great quote unquote great player who's done well at tournaments or whatever, but like if you don't know the current decks and you haven't practiced the current decks and know the interactions like the other players at locals do, they're gonna beat you. So
Yep.
it's 100%. You can't just sit down and like just think you're gonna win like that.
So let's go and focus down not such as Yu-Gi-Oh's broad, but this specific format that we're in. The last Forbidden Limited list. What did you played? Not too many cards got hit, but a lot of those cards that did get hit, you touched multiple times throughout your decks on the way. So Rise Heart, Rise Heart Forbidden, Magnuma to 1, Chaos Space to 1. Do you think that last FNL has kind of helped shape the format that we're in now to be more enjoyable? I mean, you talked about a Rise Heart just being so good. Like, how do you think that last FNL impact really shaped where we're at right now? And is it a positive or negative for the game?
I think Banner Riser was a great hit. I think it needed definitely like that card alone gate kept a lot of strategies from being able to be played. Just like having the easiest like almost free to summon walking macro, banish everything like that was just too oppressive for a lot of decks to be able to play with. Like look at Terror Element. As soon as that card got banned, Terror Element came back as one of the best decks after seeing almost no play aside from Shuping, who was really good with that deck.
Dedicated.
And there was actually one event where Full Power Tear and Riser were both legal for the same event. It was the 3v3 YCS in Mexico City. But I still think Tear was the best deck for that event. But once they hit Full Power Tear, which was like really, really overpowered, Tear just saw no play as long as the Rise Heart was in the format. Until the moment they hit it, Tear just was one of the best decks again. So I think that shows how much Rise Heart gate kept a lot of decks. But so that was a great hit. I think it should have been hit the prior list. I was very horrified when they only limited it on the prior list because I think the hits to Cashier on the prior list were not enough. Were not good. I knew they weren't going to be enough to stop Cashier from being the best deck in May. And I remember absolutely seeing the list when it went up at the event, and I was like, oh. But so I'm glad they finally hit that. I think that was a very good hit. Magnuma, needed to be hit. It's a very powerful card. I think that was due as well. Chaos Space is the one that I think really finally didn't kill Dragon, but that hurt more than the Lubellian limit would have hurt. So that was a big one, but I think it was arguably necessary. So I think it was a great list. Coming to the current format, it's a really interesting thing I was thinking about recently. The last 2 core sets, Duelist Nexus and AGOV, Age of Overlord, both really raised the overall ceiling of the game a little bit, to where the decks now, I think, are relatively speaking, very powerful compared to where they were, like the best decks were in the spring and summer. It's interesting because the game is now almost. We went through a spring and summer where, with Cashier being the best deck, it was interesting because it was a lot. It was the deck was Rise was crazy. The deck was really good, but it wasn't that hard to break the board going second. Like one entity controller or one triple tactics talent or one book of Eclipse or even Dark Hole, depending on the exact end board, was usually enough to break the whole board. Like you could beat the whole, like break the main threat of the board with just one non-engine spell card, and that was like it is kind of a sign that like overall the ceiling isn't that high on the format. But now we're like with the release of like SP Little Knight I think that card probably it's just one card, but on a conceptual level, I think that card marks a very very big shift in the game. I'll explain that in a second. With the release of SP Little Knight and just even like the baby Nor for Pearly to be able to have just like such free access to Nor on the next list, probably there will need to be a lot of hits I think to various decks to kind of balance the format out a little bit again. But yeah, just SP by itself, and also the new XET font that was released in the new set. They both have a similar function of almost any two monsters can into Little Knight, an extra layer of play to basically every deck, because once let's say you've used all your engine and they've used all their interrupts, well now a card that you can just summon for free basically, because it's generally live. Your opponent's usually summoned at least twice, and you can make it with almost so it's like it's one with SB and T-Fon, you now have two extra layers of play for free that you didn't have before. So even though like the decks are making more interrupts going first, you could argue that like going second, you also have more layers of play to play through them.
Yeah, no, definitely. SP Little Knight, I mean, it's a link, too, that you can go in anything. I think that's a big thing that you pointed out. It's like a big fallback plan. It reminds me of, like, Predaplant Verte Anaconda, where, my deck's trying to accomplish one goal, but you're able to, like, stop it with something like Droll and Lockbird, maybe a timely Ash Blossom, something like that. And you're like, well, at worst case, I'm still going to be able to summon SP Little Knight and have some sort of interaction. So it definitely shapes a lot of the way you're going to play that format. And then just... and touching on the Rescue Ace thing, I mean, how if Turbulence resolves, Rescue Ace Turbulence, being able to set those 4 rescue speller traps, it can be tough to come back from. So we're seeing the rise in popularity and stuff like Infinite Permanence, Effect Veiler, even players using stuff like Ghost Mourner, because you want to make sure you have that effect negation for the Turbulence. But then they can go a route and make SP Little Knight, before you even have the chance to negate the Turbulence, so they can play around that as well. So it's like the layers continue to grow as the format evolves and expands. And that's one of my favorite things as a spectator, to see how it's going to evolve, how players are going to counter that, and how they're going to deal with that at the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series. So let's talk about the future. So you're clearly a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan. You have a lot to say about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. What is your overall outlook on the future of Yu-Gi-Oh? I mean, just from an outside perspective for the TCG, digital games, the overall brand. Like, what are you looking to see, and are you excited about many more years of Yu-Gi-Oh! To come?
Definitely. I think the game is going to keep growing. I think it's at a good spot. I think Master Duel has been bringing in a huge amount of players into like not necessarily TCG, but just into the game overall. I think Master Duel is like I've run into people who have never played Yu-Gi-Oh, the card game, but who have been like I was at a family gathering last year, and I was telling one of my cousins like about how I've been traveling for Yu-Gi-Oh, and they were like, "Oh, I play Master Duel." I was like, "Oh, cool!" Like, yeah. So that's always funny. I think that's awesome, and I think it has even a little bit been helping bring new players into the TCG through Master Duel as a pipeline a little bit as well. Yeah, I think Master Duel is like a huge thing. It's a very good thing.
Now we're going to move on to the products. And Valiant Smashers did just come out, but the Rarity Collection was a huge release. It came out the same weekend as YCS Richmond. 7 different rarities for all of the cards in the set. So I mean, I know as I've been opening booster packs, my deck now has 3 different Infinite Impermanences and 3 different rarities. But I'm looking to try and get all of them in the same ones. I mean, obviously the Quarter Century Secret Rares are really cool. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, I've been waiting, since it came out back in 2017 for it to have a high rarity. So now to have the Quarter Century Secret Rares is really cool. My favorite personally, I think, would be the Prismatic Style Collector Rare Called by the Grave. I just really like the way it looks, the sparkles and the shadow around the thing. Is there a favorite card or favorite rarity that you have in the Rarity Collection, Paulie?
So I don't know if I can really have I don't know if I have a favorite card. I actually haven't opened any of the Rarity Collection yet. When I was a kid, I loved collecting things. Like I collect, like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? Like I play more than I collect nowadays, but like I've always been a collector. I do collect, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I have a lot of old cards from when I was a kid that I still have. And this is I was always kind of like a completionist. Like I wanted to collect all the little variants and little like different versions of a card or like of a toy when I was a kid, right? And so like seeing that like each card comes each rarity, like that's the collector in me, and like that's actually something I'm very like excited about, and like I want to start like collecting cards from this set. They're shiny, they look awesome, they're like actual competitive cards, so like it checks all the boxes for like competitive players, for collectors. I think this is a really cool set. I hope they'll do it maybe again in the future. And yeah, I also am notorious for using like mixed matched rarities in my deck, where like I'll have like 2 secret ash and like 1 common ash. So now I can deliberately mix match every single rarity of every single card in my deck and annoy all my friends.
That is awesome. Yeah, I do the same thing, like, but it's not by like design. It just kind of happens that way. Like, oh, this is what I got. This is what I'm playing with.
Same, honest, same.
That's funny, but I do like having the pretty stuff. After a while, I'll eventually get all the shiny cards that I want. But looking towards the future, do you know anything about like upcoming Yu-Gi-Oh products? We have like Phantom Nightmare and Maze of Millennia on the horizon. Are you excited about those? I know I am personally. I mean, I work at Konami, so I know probably a little bit more about the sets. But I'll tell you, Maze of Millennia is going to be a fun one. It's the follow up to the Maze of Memories from the previous year, and it's going to have new cards like Bonfire, which I don't know if you're familiar with quite yet, but it works really well with the cards in Valiant Smashers and a lot of other Pyro themes. Is there anything that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, no, the last couple of days actually, I've heard a little bit about some of the upcoming sets, and I've on a competitive level within the community, I've been hearing a lot of hype about. Specifically, I think the Snake Eye archetype, which is like support for fire monsters, similar to the Diabellstar Snake Eye card, the spell card that's played in like the Rescue deck. There's some new like Snake Eye support coming out for fire monsters, as well as the new Fire King structure deck. And from what I'm hearing, like a lot of players are very hyped about like that combination and are expecting the Fire King Snake Eye like fire deck. And then the Maze set I hear has some potentially some new TCG exclusives that have not been announced yet. So that. Like, I'm not sure if that's accurate now. That's what I was told. Which is like always cool. I like when things come out that like we find out last minute, which is a surprise. So that could be interesting.
There's a picture of a Flame Swordsman card on the box art. We'll have to wait and see what exactly that entails.
Yes. So yeah, I'm excited for some of the upcoming stuff for sure. The last couple core sets, like Duelist Nexus, Age of Warfare, like I said earlier, like have just been so impactful to the meta. Which it'll be interesting to see if the next one, if the pattern holds.
Yeah, Structure Deck Fire Kings, Phantom Nightmare, Maze of Millennia, and the most recent release, Valiant Smashers, will certainly shake up the meta. I mean, I think you touched on a lot. Every release has really introduced something new to the game and has been competitive right out of the box. So you always want to look out to get like the newest products. It's been an exciting one. Well, that's all we really have here for our roundtable. You gave us some awesome advice, some things to look forward to the future. It's been an honor. Do you have any last thoughts or anything you want to say before I let you go here, Paulie?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. This was fun. I hope everybody watching, enjoyed watching. I'm always reachable personally on, my Twitter account or my Facebook. Just my name, Paulie Aronson, if anyone ever wants to chat. I'm still gonna be keeping up with the game over the next 6 months, until I can, come back to organized play.
Well, thanks, Paulie. It was awesome having you here with me. I'm Billy Brake, here at Konami, and this was another episode of the Roundtable. Until next time, don't forget, it's time to duel.